Hi, everyone. This is Henne, Artistic Director of Theater Dybbuk. So glad to have you back with us. I'm here this week in conversation with LA Contemporary Exhibition's LACE Executive Director, Sarah Russin. Sarah, thank you for joining us.
Hi, thanks
joining
for joining me.
Yeah, and I'll patter for a moment as people sometimes join a minute or two in. So once again, this is Henne, Artistic Director of Theater Dybbuk. And throughout the course of this pandemic, we've been offering some conversations, chats, trainings online. And one of the favorite things we've started doing over the last 2 months is to be in conversation with colleagues and other artists and artistic thinkers about their work, about our world, about process. And so this week, I was really excited to invite Sarah to join me. And LA Contemporary Exhibitions, of which Sarah is Executive Director, is a really remarkable institution that in a few minutes we'll hear more about, that does work across disciplines that really speaks about our world. And we've been fortunate to be in collaboration with LACE a number of times. And most recently we did a virtual in-process presentation of our in-development work, Breaking Protocols, which is part of a whole support that is coming through the National Performance Network, and LACE is a co-commissioner of that work. And in addition, we first in 2018 presented a full production with LACE called Lost Tribes. And so before we dive into the real conversation, to give people context about our work together, I'll just introduce by saying that so Lost Tribes was a multidisciplinary theatrical piece that utilized the Lost Tribes of Israel, which I'm not going to go into the history now, but to have a complex conversation about race and identity in America. And Sarah and LACE were really generous with allowing us to kind of take over the space and transform it and do some exciting things. And the piece actually began in the lobby of the space, where we actually had actors on display. And then we transitioned into the main space where we kind of played out the rest of the work. And so I'm just going to share my screen here for a moment so people can see an image or two from that work and just a little bit of LACE. Great. So this is on the stage that was in the large gallery space, presentation space. And that is Diana Tanaka, who's at the front, one of our wonderful artists. And you can see here, this is also in the space. Some of our other great artists doing good work. And you'll notice everyone has ropes on them. And we were playing with ropes throughout the piece, this idea of the ties that bind. This is in the lobby. So this gives you a sense of how the piece began. You will notice this performer, Alex, is frozen in space. Well, of course he is, because it's a photo, but trust me, he was frozen in space. And he has a little card next to him, like a museum or gallery card, saying something about him and his history. And then you'll notice a little iPod next to him that people, much like in a museum, might listen to something while watching something. So there he is on display with some description of his identity. And then here's one more shot in the lobby of the actors on display and people walking around and looking at the display. And again, because LACE does provocative work, we wanted to play with that provocation and immediately have the audience come in and be confronted by people and their identities on display and frozen in space. And then we kind of broke that reality. So let's see if we have one more image here. Yeah, and there's Rebecca also on display. And there you can see where LACE is located, because if you notice, right, in the reflection in the background, you see a business with the name Hollywood on it. So LACE is right in the heart of Hollywood, doing really amazing work. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and that's just to say it's such a pleasure to collaborate with you, and it's easy and thought-provoking, and you have such a wonderful participant and audience base who also wants to engage in challenging work. So it's really a pleasure. So
well, it was fun to see those images again, because it was a couple of years ago. And first of all, thanks for inviting me. And I would be remiss if I did not mention your NPR setup there. Your your microphone. That's very, very serious business there.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Well, we are, we're this year, we're transitioning because of the nature of the pandemic into doing some audio and podcasting work. So, so I've invested in the, I will lean in.
I'll have to, and get your NPR voice. Well, I definitely would not need to touch base with you later, because we might need to all make an investment in this stuff as times are going on. I know we're going to
Absolutely.
talk a little bit more about that later, but you know, it's fun seeing those images, because one of the things about Lace that I love in terms of our physical space is that we are right on the Walk of Fame in Hollywood on the Boulevard. And you know, when we do things in the storefront area, which is where the program began, you know, you have people just walking by on Hollywood Boulevard looking in, and especially when we're doing stuff at night, like our program with you, you know, it's dark outside and it's lit up inside, and you know, it really activates the boulevard in a really different kind of way. And all of our friends in the business community and the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce and stuff like that, they're always trying to figure us out, you know, like what is happening, what is happening over there between the bong shop and the taco place and the t-shirt shop. And people always go, where are you on Hollywood Boulevard? I'm like, between the stripper shop and the bong shop. Of course, that could be in many places on Hollywood Boulevard, but you know, we're like right in there. We're not really in an art environment, an art you know, districts, so to speak. I mean, we're in an entertainment district, so it's really fun.
I mean, it's really what makes it, I think, so vibrant and so interesting, right? You're bringing this like interesting, challenging, sometimes multidisciplinary work into what is often seen as a kind of more touristy or commerce-based area. So I think it's a really interesting intersection. So I'm curious, so how you came to Lace, like a little bit about your own background and kind of what brought you to that space in Hollywood and now this virtual space.
Well, I know we're going to talk maybe a little bit more about it later, but I went to art school, and I went to Rhode Island School of Design way back in the day. And so I'm trained as an artist. You know, I was an artist in high school and all that. You know, I worked at the art schools for about 30 years. And then I saw this job at Lace, and my friend, Mark Greenfield, he was the interim director at the time. Lace was between directors. And I just wrote to him and I was like, hey, Mark, are you going to be the new director of Lace? He's like, oh, no, I'm just helping them out. And I'm like, you know, I think I could do that job. And, you know, we had a good laugh and we had some coffee. And, you know, I just really thought about all the, you know, I've always wanted to run a nonprofit, not create one like you. That's a lot more work, but to run a nonprofit. And Lace just had so many different aspects of it were really connected with my background. So, you know, really understanding artists, connecting with artists, exhibition presentation, programming, fundraising, you know, working with a team. So like all the different things I've really done before. The only thing I hadn't done was run a facility per se. And so that actually has been super challenging. And I've learned a lot, like when we did our project together, how we blew out the fuses and, you know, the breakers, set off all the breakers because you had such an amazing production of sound and lights. And even though we tested it out, it's always great in the test run, right?
Right.
So, you know, just dealing with a 1919 building and all the challenges that brings, and just all the things that have to happen to maintain a space and keep it going with a team. So that was a whole other layer that I didn't have experience with, but now I do. So, so that's my quick sketch on my background. I mean, I've been in LA for about 30 years, and you know a lot of artists, you know, just from my time with the art schools and just being here. And so I think one of the things that I bring, because my team is fairly young, is that you know, I know all the old school artists too, you know, the people who've been around for a while. And we like that because, you know, we talk about diversity a lot in in the art world, in our world in general. And I see multi-generational or intergenerational as part of that diversity, that we don't leave out older artists, you know, whatever that means, older, whatever your dividing line is on that, you know, the art world can be a little bit, and the art world being like maybe the traditional commercial art world is very into flavor of the month, very into like fresh and new. And there are a lot of, you know, very serious artists who are not famous, who've been at it for many decades. And I have a very deep admiration for those artists, whether they're painters or actors or, you know, any kind of performers, musicians, people who continue to make their work regardless of, you know, critical or financial success, that they are true artists, regardless of the, you know, rewards that they get back from the establishment for their work, that they continue to make things. So, so that's like the intergenerational thing is very important to me.
Yeah. I mean, I really love hearing you talk about your own, you know, what you bring to the work, and also Lace overall, and this conversation between, you know, the value of the work and what it brings to the community and the people who witness it, and also honoring and supporting artists who have been at it and who are doing the hard work day to day, you know, disconnected from acclaim or notoriety and connected to the work and to the process. And so I think that's a really nice mixture of things. And so I think I'd love to hear you share a bit about, because, okay, so Lace does just kind of encapsulated for us in a large way, and just to help people understand, you know, there's performance art happening, there's visual art happening. It's a communal space in some ways. Inside a lot of the art you present, there's often questions about society and equity and justice and identity. And so I'd love to just have you share a bit more about Lace and what it is and how it works and all of that.
Sure. So Lace is, you know, we call ourselves the longest running incubator for artists and curators in LA. So Lace was founded in 1978 by Harry Gamboa and a bunch of artists who, you know, weren't really finding places for themselves in like more traditional art settings. So it was an artist started space, and it started in downtown. There were a couple different locations in downtown. One was on Broadway. And then the one more people know about was on Industrial Street, which is now the Arts District in LA. And if you're down there, it's near Industrial and Mateo, near the Toy Loft building, where they're now all condos, lofts. When you go to the old Lace building, it still has the Lace sign on it. The old Lace sign is there, the Lace letters on the front and the side of the building.
Cool.
And there's also donor plaques. So people and entities, foundations that gave money to Lace in the 80s are still up there, which is so cool. And then Lace moved to Hollywood in 1993, 94. And we've actually been in Hollywood longer than we were in downtown. But the early days, a lot of people think about Lace there. And it's kind of interesting. We had a 40th anniversary party in 2018. And we invited all the former directors that we could reach, which was all but one, because she doesn't live in the area anymore. One guy came down from Northern California, Brian Carl, but they all came, and we did a panel with with different artists and people who were involved with Lace. And someone said something really interesting that cracked me up. She said, wow, she was from the old Lace downtown. She said, oh, I always thought about Lace as that physical building, but now I realize that Lace is really about the people. And of course, I would always have thought of it in that way, as an organization that's deeper than the physical space. It's about sort of this, a community of people who've done performance art, people who've been on the outside, you know, so you know, the early days of video art, you know, a lot of women were doing video art because there was no money in it, right? So if they were going to be artists that weren't invited in, then they may as well just do whatever it is that they wanted to experiment with. So queer artists, women artists, Black artists, Latinx artists, Asian artists. So I think Lace has always, like from its inception, had that tradition of showcasing really diverse artists in LA and internationally as well, doing political projects. We have a project this fall which is going to move online, but it's presenting video art from El Salvador. And we'll have a speaker, a curator from El Salvador who'll be part of the program, talking about the curation of this program. And then, we realized that it's actually part of a lineage of a few projects about El Salvador during, the big political upheavals. Lace was doing programming back then about it. So there are lots of threads of, political things that we're doing now that were done 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And we're always trying to, obviously the world is completely different now. We're making work that's of the moment, but often it does connect back into the archives and into the history. And our curator, who's wonderful, that's Daniela Lieja Quintanar. Daniela's really wonderful about thinking about the archive and how what we do now has resonance with the archive. So there's so much to say about Lace.
Yeah, no, this historical memory of where you've been and therefore can see where you're headed and the line between them. And so I'm curious, I know you have available to help people get a picture. You're welcome if you would like to share your screen, and you can kind of say a little bit about what we're looking at in terms of, as we said, it's not the physical space. Nonetheless, seeing these images can help people give help an understanding of the work.
Great. So forgive if you see all my email alerts that come through as we're going along. So this is the Lace website, and this is the landing page. So if you go to, it's welcometolace.org, which you can see at the top there. And the different things that we're working on now, it's actually kind of incredible. We're all working remotely, but we're working really hard, and we're very, very busy, and we're doing lots of projects. And one of my colleagues, I said to him, it's kind of like the way I visualize my work, our work together, is that we have all these different roads, and we're rolling rocks down all these roads at the same time. I don't want to go Sisyphean on it. We're not always pushing it up a cliff.
Right.
We are trying to keep them all moving along the roads. So this, one of our projects, one of our roads, is this beautiful edition we did with the artist Carmen Argote. And so she did a print to benefit Lace. And it's really wonderful because she, as part of the process, she came to Lace during the shutdown and actually worked on the prints physically within our space. And we have all kinds of videos of her working on the project and talking about her practice. And it's incredibly deep and beautiful. She's a beautiful artist, and we're really honored that she wanted to work with us on this. We've been doing, obviously, Black Lives Matter. The protest erupted during this quarantine, and, Lace has always been involved with this kind of content. And we've just put this out there just as a reminder, like not just in the first few weeks of the protest, but that this is an ongoing thing for us to all be thinking about. Yeah. And we have some wonderful interns that the Getty is supporting at Lace, and they're working on a monthly kind of community newsletter to really address like broader political issues, and they're editing it and writing. So a lot of it's they're sharing their opinions and insights and research. So that first one will be coming out pretty soon, so people can look for that. We also, during this time are trying to very much connect with our neighbors, and I mean neighbors in the city, but also our neighbors in Hollywood. So my friend's place, which is a homeless youth outreach, and this place called The Center of Hollywood. It's not the LGBT Center, which is also right next to Lace, but the center is just a couple blocks from us, and they do homeless outreach and help with formerly homeless or housing insecure folks in Hollywood. And, you know, we've become good friends. They had a food drive that we helped them promote. Now, the next thing is that we're trying to do a little art supply drive with them. So artists who have extra stuff they're not using, that they can bring that stuff to the center. And they're doing outdoor workshops with their residents in the parking lot with tents. And they asked their residents what they wanted to do around Black Lives Matter, like what is it that how would they want to connect with this issue? And they wanted to make art. And so we were really excited to hear that. And they reached out to us and we're like, yeah, let's see how we can help you with that. And then this slide is about Diane Rodriguez. Theater people will know who she is, but she was one of the early founders of El Teatro Campesino. And our curator, Daniela, did a beautiful exhibition a few years ago about the early history of Teatro Campesino. And it's interesting because people wouldn't think, well, like, why is an art gallery or an art space doing a show about teatro? And, you know, really only Daniela would come up with this, which was a wonderful kind of intersection between a theater company that was activist, right? I mean, their whole mission was to bring theater and entertainment, but also highlight political issues and make field workers aware of their rights, and doing it through art, doing it with humor, and doing it in a very physical kind of way. So our show was really fun. It was in our storefront and included documentation, photography, props that were used in early, you know, like a giant pencil or signs or things like that, actual objects. And it's where we started working with the Southern California Library, which is another partner we'd like to continue with. So Southern California Library is an independent library in South LA, and they're not connected with a university, and they're not a public library. They're not like LA public libraries. So they're independent, and their focus is activism and a lot about Los Angeles. And they had an amazing collection of newspapers that they lent us that featured Teatro Campesino, and then also Black Panthers, which led to the show we did the following summer about Emory Douglas, who was the graphic designer for the Black Panthers. So Daniela curated that as well. So, and then we took that show and brought it to the Southern California Library and had that on view for the local community there. A lot of people walk in there and use their resources. So, so that's I think those are all my like quick slides there. And then right below are the two shows that are scheduled for this fall. This show was supposed to be this summer. It's Ser Todo es Ser Parte. This is my terrible Spanish accent. To be whole is to be part, curated by Selene Preciado. Selene was our first emerging curator from LACE. And we have wanted, that was almost 6 years ago, and we've wanted all this time to bring Selene back to curate another show at LACE. And it's really important to us that we don't do one-offs. Like when we have a great experience with a partner like Theater Dybbuk, with Selene, we want to like keep that going with artists, with curators, other nonprofits, other collaborators. So so we're working on how to accomplish this show in the current situation. We can talk more about that. And then this show over here is the Borders of Freedom show. I mentioned that's a Salvadoran video project. So they're all short videos, and we'll be showing like the whole program in an evening with a discussion with the curator and potentially some of the artists involved as well. And then on our website, you can see news, but also our archives. I'll stop sharing this now, but the archives are really fun. They our original archives, like the physical stuff, was acquired by the Getty a couple of years ago in celebration of our 40th anniversary. So we're really thrilled that they have like, they're looking out for all that paper, and it includes everything from you know, grant applications and, you know, everything through to artist submissions and slides. Some of our new interns don't know what the word slide is. They don't know what a slide is. Slide. They don't know what a slide is. So like physical slides are there, photography, all kinds of things. So, and the other show that we do have up, that's been up for since 2018, is called the Archival Impulse, 40 years at Lace. And we decided to keep it up longer. It was only supposed to be up for like 6 months or something. People were so into this show that we just thought, let's just keep it up for longer. And it's in our project room, which is about like 350 square feet. It's not very big. It's like a New York apartment, you know, and and it has some original things under glass, and then a lot of ephemera, and it's super fun. And if anybody tunes into our benefit that's coming up in September, we're going to have a little shtick that happens within the archive room. Our MC is going to feature the archive room. So nice. more on that, but it should be fun.
So something that's occurring to me as you're speaking about all this great work, and I want to unpack one particular piece, is you talked about your emerging curators program, and about, you know, having various curatorial voices and collaboration. And I know your own history is, you know, you worked at Otis, at Art Center College of Design. And I'd love to just hear a little bit about how maybe your own past work and what led you to, as you said at the beginning, now becoming a head of a nonprofit, an arts-based nonprofit, how that has informed your thinking and approach to engaging with other curators, emerging curators, next generation, various artists, just to share a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, I guess the first thing is just when you're in a educational setting, it's funny when I tell people I worked at those places, they often assume I was a curator or ran the gallery at those places, which I did not.
Right.
Or they assume that I was a groovy professor of, you know, performance art, or which I was not. So I was an administrator at those schools. So I also worked for RISD for less than a year when I graduated from school.
Oh, wow.
Was a baby girl, worked there as a recruiter in the admissions office. So my background is really on the administrative side. And so I was a recruiter for RISD, and then I moved out to California with my husband. He's like, "You want to move to LA?" And I'm like, "Oh no, I don't." Okay.
Sure.
You know, I'd been to LA once in my life when I was 16 or something. Like, you know, I was like, okay, I don't have any white clothes. That was my that was my thought about LA. You had to have white clothes if you lived in LA. Because my thing was like, you know, Woody Allen in Annie Hall.
Right.
His visions of, you know, I was living in Rhode Island. I was working at RISD. So you know, we came out here, and then I started working pretty quickly for Art Center, and I did the same work. I was a recruiter. So what I learned doing that, you know, well, first of all, I learned the freeways in LA because I had to visit every high school in LA pretty much. And that is before, what's the word? You know, before phones.
Oh yeah, before
Cell phones,
Waze
before
and
GPS,
yeah,
before
yeah.
GPS, people, that's how old I am. We had to use like, you know, AAA maps and circle the high schools and
The
find
Thomas Guide.
The Thomas Guide, yes, exactly. So I learned the freeways, I learned LA, I learned how massive it is, and I work with all kinds of students, and I would say that like kind of really understand, like every part of the country has its own demographic makeup, but coming here, the deep Asian influence, all the Korean American kids, the Chinese American kids, working with Thai students, Indonesian students, working with students from Central America and from Mexico, second generation, you know, all of that, and helping kids with scholarships. And so like these two pathways of like the art stuff, which is like, let me help you with your portfolio, or it would be great, you know, you're 16, why don't you take a figure drawing class and then you can add to your portfolio. So like very, very specific, you know, almost like art instruction or art coaching. Right. And then the other side is, how can you possibly pay for this, and private school, and then what's the pathway to get there? So for kids whose parents didn't go to college, I work with many students like that. I think people assume that the private art schools are all rich kids, which, you know, they're there, but there are also a lot of kids on scholarships, and I work with many of those. And so I think, you know, those jobs really helped me, you know, kind of understand LA, and working with all these different kinds of students. And I would say that it's a profession. Like I also actually encourage some of my former interns to apply for admissions jobs. In fact, I was just a reference for someone this week to do the job I did when I was 24. And it's a wonderful job, you know, to be part of an art school community. And I love that work. But I lost my train of thought there for a minute. Where was I? I think that it's a helping profession. And you know, I kind of made it, I still kind of think of myself as an artist, but I see myself more as a supporter and like a badass cheerleader for artists and for people. And that's my role in this world. That's my purpose. Yeah. And, you know, they say the secret to long life and to happiness is a sense of purpose more than anything. I hope it's not exercise, because that will be, that will be really a bummer if I find that to be the case. But sense of purpose, like, you know, this is what I do, you know, and bringing a team together with a team always, because we never do this stuff on our own. That's our purpose, to support artists and I would say artistic activity, you know, artists in a broad way.
Well, what I appreciate about hearing that is it shows up in the work. You know, my experience of LACE is different voices coming together, and yet it still feels cohesive, and yet it's different perspectives, and it's also a space for a lot of partnership. And so that shows up, you know, not only in sort of providing opportunity, but also in allowing various voices to be in conversation, and that really shows up in the work. So
thank you.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the tradition and the history of LACE, and it's also my, you know, very strong. When I came in, I'm actually the first director of LACE that's not a curator. So, you know, I'm work with deciding all the things that we're going to do along with the team, and obviously with our chief curator. So Danielle is our chief curator and director of programming, but we do have like these guest curators come in. So she and I will with the team will decide what what collaborators and what projects we'll do ultimately, but I'm not personally curating. So, so that's kind of a shift. And so for me, it was really important that we have a curator, and there's like a core voice, that's consistent with our history, but that there's room for people like our emerging curators program. People bring projects that Daniela would not have concocted. I would never come up with. One was a show about K-pop, and I'm like, I'm not the demographic. I don't know anything about K-pop. And it was the most incredible show and brought new audiences to us as well. And, we were talking about artists early on in the chat. And one thing I wanted to jump in and say is that often in the philanthropic world, there's this idea that there are the artists and there's the audience. Right. And like the artists do stuff that pushes out to the audience. And I always find that very weird, because artists are also the audience. Artists are a huge part of our audience. They're like a core part of our community. So if artists come to a show and they're really appreciative of it and interact with it, are they less important than a family on Hollywood Boulevard who comes into a show? I would say they're both important. So we have these parallel audiences, what I would call an informed or sophisticated art audience that's international. Like we have curators who wander in from Germany or Istanbul or wherever into Lace because they seek us out and they know what Lace is about. It's an experimental art venue. And then we have people who just wander in off the street or like, what's this place? How long have you been here? And I'm like, we've been here since 1993. And we're like, come on in. And the ethos is to try to welcome everybody, know, and not make people feel stupid that they don't understand contemporary art, and to the degree that they're interested, help them like access the art. And the more you share openly with people, actually, the more interested they become, you know?
I mean, I really appreciate hearing, and then in the last few minutes, I just have a last question, but I really appreciate hearing, one is the provocation of, artists are an audience as well. And that actually art breeds art, and that it's a conversation that pushes society forward, right? So I think, and somehow, sometimes when those conversations about audience happens, the artist audience is left out. I think that's a really important point of view. And also this idea of sophistication and accessibility, that you and Daniela and your team are engaging in this act of presenting sophisticated work, but also opening space for people from all walks of life to experience it. And I think that's sometimes something that gets left out of the conversation, that dialogue between the two.
One little story about that.
Please.
The center that I mentioned earlier, in 2019, we did tours for their a small group from their community. So these are mostly like formerly homeless or recently homeless people. And I gave a tour of a show, and the artwork at the entrance was by an indigenous artist, Mercedes Durame, who's wonderful. And it was a black oval painted on the floor with different objects, like a ceramic. They look like ceramic or earth stars and sand and things like that. And then there were these red strings that went up to the ceiling. So a 15-foot ceiling, if you can imagine, in the storefront. So I started the tour and I asked the group, this is the formerly homeless group. So I said, so what do you folks think this work is about? What do you think? So this really quiet, small man says to me, it's about the cosmos. And I was like, oh my God, I'm like, yeah, that's what this, I'm like, you're totally right. And he was so pleased, like he totally tapped into what that artwork was about, but I'm sure nobody would normally ask him what he thinks.
Right.
So it was really exciting to do those tours because it was the most open group to, like, they were there because they were curious and they were interested, and they didn't know anything about any of this work that we had, and it was completely new to them, and that was really fun day.
And that kind of access is so important. And also what I heard in that story was you leading with inquiry instead of with here's what it is, right? That like it was actually more important for them to share their experience and to have that experience validated as completely accurate for what they were living. And so in the last, thank you, because it's great. In the last couple minutes, I just want to ask, and you touched on this earlier, so I want to make sure it's talked about a little bit. So we're in this moment, global pandemic, evolving and ongoing.
What are you talking about? What are you talking about?
Right? I don't know what's happening. Ongoing, evolving fight for racial justice in our world, questions of equity and identity going on, right? There's a lot of forces at play happening in the moment. And you really spoke eloquently earlier about, yes, Lace being a place, but also really underneath it being the people and an ethos and an approach. And so I think in this moment where being in the place together is not possible, although it sounds like you are using the storefront at times. Talk to us about how you're, how you and Daniela and the team are approaching this moment and the challenges and opportunities with it.
Yeah, well, like everyone, in March, we thought, oh, maybe we'll do our benefit in May. So it obviously this thing has gotten worse, has changed, as we're all we're adapting, and we adopted a moniker for a while that was adapt and persevere. So that was kind of where the team and I were. It's like, okay, all right, we're not working in the space. What are we going to be doing? How are we adapting? So we spent between March and now doing lots of online enrichment of our website, because I see the website is like that repository for our archives. So even though the Getty has the physical stuff, all of our shows back to 1978 and all the performances are there, and we keep adding images and videos, and we've been doing some podcasts like you've been doing. Cool. And like we just had a show from 2 years ago. I was like, where's the video from that opening performance? And we had never posted it. And so we hired the artist to edit it for us. And also being able to share a little money with artists to do those kinds of things. And so we'll be sharing that soon. It was you were there. It was the choir performance.
Yes, it was remarkable. Yeah.
For Henne Sarno's show. And so she edited the video, and we'll be able to play that. And it's quite beautiful. It's like a 5-minute thing or a 7-minute thing. So we've been catching up on a lot of things that we always want to do, but don't have time because we're putting shows physically together. So that's good. Everybody's looking for the silver lining. So, but we did a project with you. So we pivoted to our April project that was supposed to be in the gallery. We did it online, and you were our early guinea pig to see what that thing looked like, and we appreciated that.
Sure.
And we have another project in August that we haven't promoted yet, but at the end of this month, I believe, will be coming out a new creation, new project. And then our fall, so we were planning on doing some summer shows. And so like all of my colleagues, I belong to a group called the Lava Coalition, which is, it's a new little group that came together during the pandemic. It's LA Visual Arts Coalition. Nice. So it's a group of places like Lace that are smaller visual arts organizations in LA. and we get together to talk about all of our issues. And we're going to be doing a little bit of group fundraising and stuff like that. But a lot of it is, you know, support for each other and sharing information. And why did I bring up the lava group? Oh my gosh.
We're talking about the evolving what's
Oh,
coming.
the evolving. Yeah.
Yeah.
So all of my colleagues are dealing with what we're dealing with, which is
Yeah.
like, we thought we would move this show to here, but now, like, you know, the city shut down museums, you know, that's official. That's a health, you know,
That's
thing.
right.
And so it's not just like we're nervous about it. It's like we can't open. So, you know, we've been dominoing all of our projects. So so Daniela has a beautiful big show called Intergalactics Against Isolation, with the Spanish title is oh, I hope I don't mess it up. Aislamiento. Isolation's a beautiful word in Spanish. Aislamiento. And
Wow.
so that was supposed to be in the fall, and it's going to get moved to January. It's a show about art made around violence on the borders, exploring those issues, both US, Mexico, and Mexico, Central America, and will include international artists from all these places. We will likely, you know, it has, all of our shows like this have lots of public programming components in addition to the exhibition. So it's very likely all the public programming will focus online.
Right.
We're planning that exhibition in person. It's funded by the Mike Kelly Foundation. We're really proud to receive that support this year for that project. And then the research for the project was funded by Warhol, and Danielle's been, you know, researching this project for 2 years. So it's a very important project to us. So our summer show got moved to the fall, and now we're working it out. So there's the two projects I showed, the Salvadoran video project, which very easily can move online. The other show, I believe we're going to focus on the storefront, and we're going to do it. And we're thinking about lace, like we talked about the boulevard and looking in, as when it's lit, that it's a little jewel box, you know, not so little, it's 15-foot ceilings. So it's going to be our jewel box presentation for the fall. And we're going to do the exhibition. You know, the curator will adapt the exhibition for a little bit smaller space, but also we're all excited because it will be very forward facing. So everything that's in there you can see from the street. We don't necessarily want to encourage people to congregate all in front of there, but you know, there are still people on the boulevard. You know, there are still families. I don't know who these families are that are, I don't know if they're from out of town or they're local, but there are people on the boulevard, and we're like, okay, let's give them some art. And this will be a beautiful project. So we're really excited about that. So it's really just like we're talking about adapting, keep going. And our mission doesn't change just because our gallery is closed right now. You know, the things that we want to talk about and say will continue. And, you know, I think everybody has their ups and downs in their personal and professional worlds, and we can go to dark places. And a friend of mine said, the only way we're going to get out of this is through art. Like, really, that art is, I mean, it sounds corny and everything, but, you know, art can be a unifying factor in our world. And it can be, it's a place of comfort for people now. Like, we're watching art online, we're watching film, this is how we're getting through this, is art is helping us get through. And I hope that the world remembers that when it's all over, and that they continue supporting the arts. And, you know, we've been really fortunate. Places like the Getty came forward and supported us, as well as 80 other colleagues working in the small nonprofit arts arena to help us keep going. So we're gonna get through. I'm an optimist at core. I kind of feel like you can't do our work unless you're an optimist. It's a requirement. It's a requirement to run a nonprofit, to be in the arts. It's it requires optimism. That's who I am naturally, but these push the boundaries. They really do. This situation pushes the boundaries and of everybody, but I'm really grateful for our supporters and also our team. We have a small, we call them small but mighty team. So I mentioned Daniela. We have Juan Silverio, Brennan Perry, his name just went out of my head, Fiona Ball, and who did I forget? We have our French intern, Dorothy, who's been with us an entire year volunteering for LACE and got caught in LA during a global pandemic. So she's helping us with our benefit that's coming up, and that's September 9th, and it'll be online. It'll be all over our website. And our Instagram is super fun. If people want to go on and see what we're posting, it's just welcome to LACE. So
great. Well, Sarah, thank you so much. I think this your sort of speaking about the value of art and that art perseveres. And although the delivery method may change in the moment, the reason underneath it exists and continues. And yes, and so Instagram, you heard, go to welcometolace.org. And also, I'll just say, I'll be back in 2 weeks in another conversation. This one will be with Greg Salyer, the president of the Philosophical Research Society. So we'll look forward to that conversation.
With your NPR.
Yes, in 2 weeks. We'll look forward to seeing you. And Sarah, it's always a pleasure. And I'm so grateful you took the time. And thank you for being such a good collaborator and partner and advocate for important work. So all my best to you and your team. And thanks everyone for watching, and take care.
Thanks so much, Aaron.
Bye.